control his emotions. Is that difficult for us to do sometimes? For us to control our emotions, especially what? When we're angry, when we're mad. Have we ever been in a situation where we've gotten mad about something, and then we lash out, and then afterwards reflect on what we did, and we thought, oh, how ridiculous was my action? How silly of me. When is it? When we think about us losing our cool, when we don't practice that self-control, when we're not being temperate, especially concerning anger, what sort of situations were you in that has landed you in that condition? And I want to start off by saying that, of course, I have times when I lose my cool too, and these are things that as Christians we need to work on. We need to overcome. As of late, what I've noticed is that I get unreasonably angry, and I tend to lose my cool. I tend to lose my self-control in situations when I'm very stressed out. Of course, most of you know that I'm a college student too, and especially when I'm piled on with a bunch of homework, and I got tests coming up, and I've got all of these other responsibilities and all of these other things that I've got to do, and I just don't have the time. And it might be a certain subject that I've just been working on a long time, and I can't get it. I just spend so much time, so many hours in the study, in the homework, and I start feeling very stressed out because of it. And my kids, when I'm studying, when I'm working, the kids, from time to time, they want to come in and talk to me, bring me their problems, bring me their issues. When at any other time it wouldn't be a problem, but because I'm so stressed out, I tend to kind of lash out at them a little bit, especially poor little Molly. She's 6 years old. She doesn't understand anything about stress and studying. All that she knows is, I want to go talk to my dad. I want to go play with my dad. I want to show my dad my picture that I drew, and I feel so ashamed whenever she brings me these sort of things, and of course not at the time, but when she brings me these sort of things and she wants to show me the things that she has done, or show me something that she has discovered, something new in life, and I lash out at her for bothering me while I'm studying. And of course, this semester is over the summer semester is over, and I'm reflecting back on all the time that I spent on schoolwork. I reflect on all the stress that I was under, and I feel ashamed for treating my family the way that I did during those times when I was really stressed out, because that stress just triggered that emotion of anger when I'm being bothered, when I'm being distracted, and I'm trying to do this work, and after the summer semester was over, I said I am so glad that class is over. I'm so glad, and my wife said no more glad than the rest of your family is. Wow. That hurt. Well, I mean, it hurt in the sense that it got to my conscience, and it just reminds me that this is something that I need to watch out for. I need to be careful about, especially when I get into a situation when I get stressed, because when I get stressed, if somebody bothers me with something that I would consider to be trivial, I lash out. Does anybody have any of that same sort sort of experience, or have had an experience during their life when they have lost their cool, and they reflect on it? Does anybody have any situation in their life? Everybody is completely temperate, right? Adam?
Once a day, at least.
Once a day, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's the same sort of thing. I think that when we, one thing that I do personally, I'm very quick to apologize. It's almost instantly, when you do something like that, you regret it. Especially toward your family, toward your children, and I'm in the habit of, apologizing, almost immediately. Talking with kids, telling them I'm not perfect. I make mistakes. I'm working on it too. But I think also that can't allow that to be a cop out. Say, oh well, at least I apologized. That there's, you still have to, continue to work on it.
Yes, yeah, and I think that that's a good thing as Christians. Whenever we have those times, those situations, that we reflect on those things and ask ourselves, what is it that brought me here? Obviously, the way that I acted, it was an inordinate way. What is it that brought me to that point? And is there anything that I can do to fix things at the front end, so I don't end up in a situation in the tail end of it where I'm doing things like saying things that I shouldn't, lashing out at people who don't deserve it. And again, it's something for us to think about, Janice.
I think one of the things that we can do is we need to know our triggers, because every one of us has triggers that will send us off, and if we know our triggers, then we'll know how to better manage that.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. One of my triggers is insults. When somebody, when I get insulted by somebody, I'm sure it's a trigger for most people. When I'm insulted, I don't know what it is. I just stew on it all day. I spend the day thinking, I should have said this, or I should have said that. In return, I remember in particular. I was driving out of my neighborhood, and this guy came up to an intersection, and he kind of cut me off, and he turned. Well, I was just following behind him. I didn't think anything of it, but apparently he thought that me following him out of the neighborhood and up several streets, and I was still behind him. He took another turn, and he stuck his middle finger up at me as he was turning around the corner. I didn't say anything. I didn't do anything. I didn't do anything to provoke such activity. But you know what? It bothered me. It bothered me all day. I didn't even do anything to deserve that. And then I was. Of course, at the end of the day, I was reflecting on it, and I thought, how silly for me to spend so much emotional capital on something so ridiculous. But again, it's those triggers. We just gotta watch out for it. Janice?
And just one other thing, I was thinking about this today, how we're supposed to esteem others more than ourselves.
Yes.
Then you feel like they are, you're being used or you're being mistreated, and then that's where the anger comes.
Is it wrong to feel anger concerning injustice? No. Let's talk. Let's reflect on some Bible things. James chapter 1 and verse 19 tells us that we need to do what? Be slow to do what? Be slow to be angry. Be slow to anger. In Ephesians chapter 4 in verse 26. What does it tell us? It says, be angry, yet do not sin. Do not let the sun go down on your anger. And I know that there's some different thoughts on exactly what that means to let the sun go down on your anger. I heard a preacher say one time that it's okay to be angry, but you know what? Whatever it is that you're angry about, you better settle it before sundown. You better settle it before evening time because that's the time frame that you have to be angry. Of course, he was joking about that, but the point is that whatever it is that's triggering that anger, we shouldn't carry it on from day to day to day. Resolve it. Being slow to anger. What do you think James is talking about there? Of course, James, the Apostle Paul, in Ephesians chapter 4, is telling us that we need to be that we should be angry, but do not sin in your anger. Of course, James, like Paul, was a realist, understanding that as human beings we have these emotions. We do get angry, but what is the point that is being made in those passages? It sounds to me like control of these things, and we get into all sorts of problems, and that could be true for any sort of emotion that we feel. We let any sort of emotion overcome us to the point where we can't control it. It's going to give us problems. The qualifications of elders that we see in 1 Timothy 3 and Titus chapter 1. It's that whole idea of being temperate, being self-controlled, being temperate in our emotions, and we're talking about being temperate on the subject of anger. Ross?
Oh, we also know that when you're quick to get angry, you have a tendency to say things, do things.
Yes.
That afterwards you're like, maybe I shouldn't have said that, or maybe I shouldn't have done that. But when we're slow to anger, we're more calculated on what we say, what we do.
Yes.
And we make sure that what we're saying and doing is right.
Yeah. Adam?
I think it may be good to take a step back and talk about this word here, the idea of anger, because when we look at this, I don't think there's anything wrong in and of itself, as we were saying. The emotion of anger is not the problem. It's the action
That's right.
that's produced from it. Like, that's why we're talking about control and these things. And so I think it's it may put, at least in our minds, a misnomer that we're thinking anger is we're craving that with sin, or it's wrong, and that's not the case. It's the action. I think we should be maybe talking about wrath, wrathful.
Yeah. Okay.
It's this uncontrolled anger.
That's right. That's right. And that's
anger produces, like the brother says in here, it's like fire. It's a tool. You can use it just like any other emotion. Anger can incite great change, great influence, great things that can happen from it if you're using it in the right way. But just like Ross is saying, when you're using it uncontrolled, when you're lashing out, when you're saying things you shouldn't have said, later on you're thinking about it. And so what they're talking about here, slow to anger, is not you can't get angry instantly out of it, but it's thinking before you act is the whole point here, that we're and I anytime that I get angry and I at least give myself a minute or two to cool off, I'm amazed at how well I can handle the situation. And when I lose control, I blunder it up so badly it's almost impossible to fix sometimes.
Yes.
And it's just a minute difference. It's just that thinking before you act.
Right. And the author gives us the Greek terminology, the Greek words that are used in the New Testament to describe anger. You got the Greek words orge and thumos. Orge signified anger as being the strongest of all passions. Thumos, an outburst of wrath resulting from inward indignation. The difference between the two words is that while thumos is more volatile in its manifestation, orge is a deep-seated and long-lasting in its nature. And getting to Adam's point here, and I'm glad we're getting to this now. Well, first off, in that second paragraph, he said that neither one of these characteristics is fitting for a child of God. Certainly, if these words define our character, that's going to be a problem. But what we do with anger is going to make all the difference in the world. It's going to make all the difference in the world. And this author writes, anger is like a fire. If controlled, a fire can do us much good, but if it gets out of control, it can do much damage. What does that sound like? James chapter 3. James chapter 3. Can we do good things with our tongue? But can we do good things with our mouth? But where does the problem come?
It's uncontrolled.
When it's uncontrolled. When we let it get out of control. And anger is much in the same way. You know, anger can produce within us that motivation to address a problem, to address an issue. But again, Adam's right. That emotion that we feel that triggers us to tell us that there is something that needs to be addressed, something that needs to be taken care of. You know, for instance, all the lashing out that I do at my family whenever I get bothered while I'm trying to study or while I'm trying to take a test or while I'm trying to do this, that, and another thing. Maybe the problem is my attitude toward the schooling. Maybe my problem is my priorities. I'm prioritizing worldly education over the needs of my family. Maybe that's the problem. If I correct these things, or if I correct my attitude toward these things, maybe I wouldn't lash out like I do. Let's think about this. Some people can control their anger and thus do much good with their words and influence. However, some Christians seem to have a hard time controlling their anger. And I think this is what it's all about. It's what it's all about. It's controlling those deep-seated emotions. Whenever something happens in our life, whenever there's a stressful situation, whenever we are insulted, whenever we are embarrassed, sometimes embarrassment sometimes is a trigger for a lot of people. You ever had a situation when somebody calls you out on something that you did that's wrong, and you know it, and you know that they're right? Oftentimes, how do people react to that? They what's that? They get defensive. They get angry. Did not Brother Stephen in Acts chapter 7 have an experience with that? When he was calling out the Jews of his time, and he was right. And what was the reaction? They killed him. They killed him, and we're gonna talk about that in just a moment, and the relationship between that uncontrolled fiery wrath, that anger and murder. So, what is wrong with uncontrolled anger? What is wrong with uncontrolled anger? First, it tells us that anger leads us to sin. Be angry and do not sin. Do not let the sun go down on your wrath, nor give place to the devil. This passage is not a license for anger, as it is a warning about the connection between anger and sin. Again, as we've been talking about this morning, how easy it is for anger to cause us to lose our cool. and do things that we regret later. Remember, anger is defined as one of the strongest of man's passions. We are not to let anger get the best of us, to blind our senses and reason and lead us to sin. Proverbs 29:22, an angry man stirs at strife, and a furious man abounds in transgression. That's a stark reminder of how important it is for us to keep our cool. That we make sure that we have everything under control. And if there is something that is causing us to lose our cool, again, maybe that's the time to evaluate. What is it that's bringing me to this point? Is there something that's going on in my life that I can fix in order so that I'm better able to control myself, to control my emotions? When God rejected Cain's offering, Cain became angry. The Lord said to Cain, "Why are you angry, and why has your countenance fallen? If you do well, will not your countenance be lifted up? And if you do not do well, sin is crouching at the door, and its desire is for you, but you must master it." And this is something that I underlined in my booklet. God warned Cain that his anger was opening the door to sin. So this is why we got to be careful of these things. Another problem with uncontrolled anger is the fact that anger resides in the same place in the heart as murder. In Matthew chapter 5 and verse 21, Jesus said, You have heard that it was said to those of old, you shall not murder, and whoever murders will be in danger of judgment. But I say to you that whoever is angry with his brother without a cause shall be in danger of the judgment. And whoever says to his brother, Raka, shall be in danger of the council. But whoever says, you fool, shall be in danger of hell fire. Are there legitimate reasons to be angry at a person? What do you think Jesus is talking about here? Is this some sort of warning? Some sort of warning? This is the way I see it. This is warning us that anger and murder they both come from the same place, and we need to be careful with that anger, because if we don't be careful, that anger can lead us to doing things that are going to land us into sin. The situation that we had just talked about in Acts chapter 7 concerning Stephen. These guys, when Stephen was preaching to them, it said that they were cut to the quick. These guys were cut to the quick, and I made mention of this in the past. If anybody doesn't know what the quick is, if you're anybody that has a dog or a cat has ever tried to trim their nails, all that pink at the base of the claws, that's called the quick. And anytime you're trimming nails or anything like that, if you were to cut the pink part, in that pink part there's all sorts of nerves and all sorts of blood vessels and things in that. If you were to cut a nail to the quick, let's say you're trying to trim your cat's nails, how do you think that cat's going to react? You think that cat is going to react in a controlled fashion when it's cut to the quick? These guys were cut to the heart. Their consciences were pricked. It caused them to gnash their teeth at Stephen and ultimately stone him. This is a warning for us to remind us that anger and murder they both come from the same place. The fact that there are severe consequences. Being angry without a cause. Having stressful situations in your life, has that ever caused you to become angry at somebody unjustly? Who hasn't? Who hasn't experienced that? I know I have, and it's something that I need to work a whole lot more on. Adam?
I would say instead of without a cause, without a just cause.
Without just cause.
There's always some reason, It may not
Yeah.
be rational. It may be, from envy or some other sin.
I think that's implied too. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but yeah, because usually we're not just angry just for the sake of being angry. Some people probably are, but most people are. They'll have some reason. But like you said, you have to start asking yourself those questions.
Mhm.
All of the things that you're saying there about priorities and the reasoning why.
Yeah, yeah. Well, here's another situation. The fact that the anger is condemned as a work of the flesh. In Galatians chapter 5, starting at verse 19, that says, "Now the deeds of the flesh are evident, which are immorality, impurity, sensuality, idolatry, sorcery, enmity, strife, jealousy." Look at this, outbursts of anger. Outbursts of anger. Disputes, dissensions, factions, envying, drunkenness, carousing. I just find it interesting that the outbursts of anger are listed among things like immorality and sorcery and idolatry. Things that we would say, I would never get involved in those sort of things. Well, I'm glad I don't do any of those things. Well, how about outbursts of anger? Wow, that's a humiliating spiritual check on us when we are uncontrolled in our anger. Do you think what's another work of the flesh that's talking about dissensions between people? Do you think that the outbursts of anger can easily lead to dissensions among folks? We're going to talk about that shortly. So some Christians say, I may be a hothead, I may have a short fuse, I may fly off the handle, and I give people a piece of my mind, but that's just the way that I am. How many times have we heard that? I've actually heard that among brethren. What do you say to that? Is this something that we just are? Is it easier for some folks to control their emotions than others? Well, absolutely, absolutely. But what would you say to those that say, well, I'm just that kind of person. You're just going to have to learn to live with it. What would you say to that sort of response? Could it be that they're that way because that's just the way that they want to be and they don't want to change? They don't want to repent. Isn't that true for a host of other sins?
Or maybe they tried and it's just too hard. They feel it's too hard, so they're not going to try. Kind of like if you smoke cigarettes, and I heard that was a hard thing to give up, but some people just give up and continue to smoke. So they've given up and they're like, well, that's just the way I am. I tried it.
Right. Well, this is why we're talking about this. So that we can see what the Bible says about how it is that we are to overcome these things. That's the whole point. But the whole point is overcoming a difficult time in controlling our emotions, controlling our anger. Anger, the Bible tells us, is characteristic of a fool. Do not hasten in your spirit to be angry. What does it mean to hasten in your spirit to be angry? It means to fly off the handle. Don't fly off the handle. Don't be a hothead. For anger rests in the bosom of fools. Proverbs chapter 12, verse 16. A fool's wrath is known at once, but a prudent man covers shame. When we have been made the biggest fool, when have we made the biggest fools out of ourselves? Has it not been when we have spoken or acted out of anger? When I thought about that question, how true it is. We wouldn't have the time for me to be able to stand up here and tell you all the stupid things that I've said and done out of anger because of my lack of self-control. So, a prudent or wise person realizes it is a foolish and shameful thing to be controlled by one's anger. Another thing concerning anger is its fruits are are hard to overcome. Proverbs chapter 30 and verse 33, for as the churning of milk produces butter, and wringing the nose produces blood, so the forcing of wrath produces strife. You know, we just talked about the outbursts of anger and how that relates to dissensions. Both Galatians chapter 5 talked about being works of the flesh. What do you think is going to come out of an attitude or a characteristic of being a hothead? Do you think that this is an individual that promotes unity, that promotes love, that promotes patience, that promotes forgiveness and long suffering and bearing up with other people? Do you think that being a hothead is going to run against any of those characteristics and attributes that a Christian should have? Dennis, and then Adam.
Well, the other issue is too, like, if you say something out of anger to someone, they get hurt, and their natural instincts come back at you, and then it becomes a never-ending circle of one up.
Sure. Yeah. Adam? Okay. So the author continues. He says, unfortunately, with uncontrolled anger, with those with uncontrolled anger never seem to learn from their mistakes. A man of great wrath will suffer punishment, for if you rescue him, you'll have to do it again. People who this points again to this idea of having that lack of temperance, of having that lack of self-control. They're going to get themselves into trouble time and time and time again. Why? Because they're not fixing the root of the problem. They're not getting to that deep-seated root, that lack of self-control. Moreover, anger does not accomplish the will of God. So then, my beloved brethren, let every man be swift to hear, slow to speak, slow to wrath, slow to anger. For the wrath of man does not produce the righteousness of God. What do you think that any good thing will come out of those who are controlled, the author says that they are governed by anger? I've never experienced it. I've asked this question. Has anybody said, that this one great, wonderful, brilliant, smart thing that I did while I was angry? People don't say that. We get ourselves under control. We control our emotions. Do we get angry? Yes, but we recognize those times, put it in check. In our anger, be slow to react. Think about things. Consider what it is that's bringing you to this point, and react reasonably and react appropriately. Anger could be that trigger that's going to cause us to react to something that needs to be fixed. But if we don't control it, it's going to cause us to act inappropriately. And that's the whole point. This is why anger can get us into sin, because it's going to cause us to react inappropriately to things which should be handled a different way. We're running out of time here, but Lord willing, we're going to talk more about anger, in particular how to overcome it. We spent all morning talking about what it is, how it is that gets us into trouble, something that we've all experienced. I'm not presenting anything new, but I'm hoping that the new things that we might be able to think about is how do I overcome it? How do I overcome it? How do I recognize it so that I can be able to act appropriately when these times come? Okay, we're just be done a few minutes early this morning, as opposed to getting into the next section of this chapter. But if I could encourage you, if you haven't done so already, please read the rest of the chapter, and then answer the questions at the end. Lord willing, next week we are going to cover the questions. Ross?
We're talking about how to overcome it. Sometimes it takes a wake-up call.
Mhm.
I know back in my 20s, for me, it was just kind of a dream that I had one night that I was working on the car. And this car, it was my Charger. And I was working on it, something wasn't going right, and I kicked the fender. And I kicked it again and again and again and again. And when I stopped, that fender was caving completely in. When I woke up, I realized I had an anger problem. And it was something that I needed to work on.
Yeah.
And it takes a while. So, and I still have problems today sometimes that something will happen and I may just, but then I tell myself, you need to calm down.
Yeah.
Stop, think about this, take a walk, go do something, but walk away from this and calm down. So,
Yeah, because it'll really get you into trouble, cause you to do things. There's a story I think that it's so appropriate for this. I went to a military school in the 90s, and in the barracks we had each of the rooms had a bunk bed. Anybody who's been in the military knows about the metal bunk beds. And I'm on the top bunk. My roommate he's at the bottom bunk. Well, he's sitting there on his bed in his sock feet, and one evening he got up and he stood up and he hit his head on that metal bar from the top bunk, and he grabbed his head and he turned around and he punched the bed. Well, in punching the bed, he missed and he hit that metal bar again with his fist. And so he was shaking his hand like this, and he turned around and he went to kick it. He went to kick the bed, but then when he kicked it, because he was wearing his sock feet, his other foot came out from under him, and he landed on the floor. And I told him, I laughed so hard. I said, I've never seen anybody get beat up by a bed, just the way that you have. But it just goes to show, what it is, how it is that uncontrolled anger can land us into all kinds of problems, and how silly he felt after being beat up by a bed because he tried to beat up an inanimate object because he was just so mad, he was just so angry. Okay, well, thank you for your attention, your participation. Like I said, if you haven't done so already, work on the questions. And
we lay down in bed at night. If we're angry, we're still sitting there fretting over it. It can affect our sleep.
that's right.
Eating away at you. And I've always looked at that scripture as, that's why if you're angry about something, you resolve it before you go to bed.
Yeah.
Because it affects you in ways other than just when you're quick to anger, doing something stupid, doing something sinful. But when you have things like that you start fretting on, and if you don't resolve it, it will eat away at you.
Yeah. I've heard another interpretation of that passage, but I don't think it changes things too much. But that it's the idea of not letting the sun go down on your anger, that you're to be angry. Don't sin, but let the anger that you feel, those emotions that you feel, continue to address life's injustices, to address things, address problems that need to be taken care of. In that don't let the sun go down on your anger. Is it don't let it stop. Don't let it stop you or being that motivation for you to do what's right. But don't let it get out of control to the point where you sin. And I think both ways just goes to show us how important it is for us to control these emotions and to be able to recognize what it is that is bringing us to that point. The situation with your car, I'm sure you reflected on it. That was ridiculous. I shouldn't have acted like that. Why is it that what was it that brought me to that? And again, it could be a situation where just things are just out of your control. Things are happening that's beyond your control, and just like those stressful situations, it could trigger us to start behaving inordinately toward certain situations.
I also like to look at it. As Christians, our goal is to be Christ-like.
Mm-hmm.
Be as not God-like, but we know how God is. And I often think about where would we be if God was quick to anger? There's a lot of us, we wouldn't be here anymore.
Yeah.
So,
We didn't get a chance to talk about the anger of Christ. There were times when he was angry too.
I mean, overturn the
That's right. That's right. Moses, that's right. Yep.
Smashing the tablets. There's a lot of anger.
Oh yeah.
Phineas. I don't know if that was that might have been a righteous judgment though. Spearing the couple through. Come on, bro. Feeling better?
Oh yeah. It's something I've been dealing with for about a year now. I have good days and bad days. But
Yeah. Good. Sure. Okay. That's cool.
yep,
I won't be here.
a little bit. See how it goes. They called me Thursday.
You gonna stay in the same position?
No, I'm going as just a general electrician.
Yeah. That's good. I'm glad. Thanks for letting me know. Okay.